Welcome to the Intimate Marriage Podcast, where I teach educated, successful couples how to have incredible, passionate relationships so that you can stop compromising and start feeling fully alive in your relationship. I'm your host, Alexandra Stockwell, aka the Intimacy Doctor. I'm a physician and an intimate marriage expert. My husband and I have been married for 26 years. We have 4 children and full professional lives, and we've created an amazing relationship. I've also shown hundreds of couples how to do so as well. If you want to deepen your understanding of your own relationship and learn to access new heights of emotional, sensual, and erotic intimacy, you're in the right place. I will show you how. Now let's dive in. When you hear me say, take responsibility, what do you think of? Does responsibility feel burdensome, heavy, assigning blame? What comes up for you? It's really worth looking at it because take responsibility, that is the 5th key. So the first key is cultivate curiosity. The second key is embrace honesty. The third key is be kind. The 4th key is choose happiness. So the 5th key is take responsibility. And of course, I'm talking about the keys to creating an intimate marriage. If you haven't listened to the prior 4 episodes, I highly recommend it. That's where I started describing each of the keys to an intimate marriage. And today it's time for the 5th, take responsibility. Now, responsibility is a loaded word for some people. And what I just want to say right off the bat is that taking responsibility ultimately is one of the biggest pivots into internal spaciousness, freedom, magnetism, and knowing your own power to create the relationship you actually want to be experiencing. So let me say a little bit more about that. Very often among educated, successful couples, we have the idea that things should be fair and equal. We have admiration for a couple where they each are 50-50 with childcare and household responsibilities. Most couples, unless they've organized their lives with one person really emphasizing work and the other person emphasizing family care, then, what I'm about to say doesn't apply. But in the situation where both people are working full time, the idea is 50-50 responsibility for the children and the household is really what's ideal, fair, and equitable. Well, that may or may not be true. I'm actually not speaking about taking care of the children or the household. But when it comes to the relationship, we often have the same idea, like meet me halfway. And when things are difficult, well, we're 50-50 responsible for, we each have our part. And it takes 2 to tango, so we really need to both evolve and change, or this is never going to work. I'm assuming some of these phrases sound familiar to you. And let me tell you, in their context, they're valid. But in the context of creating a beautiful, passionate, intimate marriage where you are using the principles of uncompromising intimacy, meaning you get to be fully expressed, you get to be more and more exactly who you are and invite your partner to do the same. And therein lies the building, the ebb and flow of erotic chemistry and personal fulfillment and connection and gratification. If that's what you're after, then just forget 50-50 responsibility. Just forget meeting me halfway and each person being 50% responsible for the state of the relationship. There's a way in which that's true, but it's not actually that useful to look at it in the context of using the principles of uncompromising intimacy to build a relationship that is going to feed your body and your soul and your intellect and your purpose on earth. For that kind of a relationship, you must take 100% responsibility for the quality of your relationship. I mean, if we get a little simplistic about it, just think, let's say you each take 50-50. Well, you're likely to be both covering some of the easier areas, duplicating the responsibility there, and leaving some of the more challenging things with no one responsible for them. Or even if you take 70% responsibility for the health and thriving of your marriage, does that mean your partner is going to cover the other 30%? Probably not, because the only way that you can be sure that the most impactful, the most perhaps challenging, nuanced, sophisticated, confronting aspects of your marriage will get the attention they deserve is if you are committed to being 100% responsible for your experience in your relationship. Now, ideally, your partner also takes 100% responsibility. But when you're taking 100% responsibility, you can't be waiting for your partner to do so as well. You go first. You take 100% responsibility and then see what happens. This episode is sponsored by the Aligned and Hot Marriage Program, my signature program designed for busy, educated couples who want to experience more closeness, more connection, and more passion. Go to theintimatemarriage.com for all the juicy details. When I coach a woman to take responsibility, to stop looking for her partner to change so that she feels better and instead find the way from the inside out for her to feel better. And by the way, sure, that could be doing some mindset work. That could be transforming her resentment. It also could be making a point of leaving the house for a few hours every weekend in order to be by herself and take a walk in the woods. Like, what taking 100% responsibility looks like is going to be incredibly variable. Do not for a moment think that taking 100% responsibility means that you need to become the 100% caretaker and nurturer. Taking 100% responsibility for the quality of your relationship does not mean that you make the bed every morning, you cook every meal, and do the dishes. Not at all. Taking responsibility for the quality of your relationship might mean arranging a very frank conversation with your partner saying, you know, our relationship is going to benefit tremendously if you attend to this and this household responsibility. Like, what taking 100% responsibility looks like is very variable, and it can absolutely include making requests of your spouse where your spouse ultimately changes, but you take responsibility by making that communication in a way that comes from love and enticement and making it feel good and being respectful, rather than making such a communication as a parent to a child or a resentful, dissatisfied spouse to a partner. And I have coached many women in this way. I haven't actually for a while, but I used to coach a number of women whose partners weren't open to coaching, and so I only could work with them. And again, they were just astounded at how much their marriage improved just from them doing the work. And actually, some time ago, I coached a man It was one of the first times that I had worked only with a man. He would have been glad for his wife to coach with me, and I would have too, but she speaks Spanish and not English, and I speak English and not Spanish, so that really wasn't an option. So I only coached him, and it was so moving to me and to him how much better the relationship became exclusively because of the changes that he was making. I don't even think he told her that he was getting relationship coaching. But through implementing my suggestions that all had to do with stopping waiting for his wife to change, to not be resentful that she wasn't changing, and instead for him to learn how to take 100% responsibility for his own experience internally and in his interactions with her and in how he felt in his own home. It really was the most amazing results. And actually, she eventually asked him to teach her how to shift how she was thinking and feeling about things and be more capable of receiving love, because she watched in a relatively short time how he went from feeling unloved to feeling very loved. And she hadn't actually done much that was different. She had been loving him the whole time. But in his taking 100% responsibility for the quality of his experience in his relationship, it just bore the most beautiful, gratifying fruits for both of them. I actually experienced this in my own marriage as well. This is many years ago. My husband did a workshop in which he learned this principle of taking 100% responsibility for all of the important aspects of your life, and our marriage was certainly one of them. And I didn't actually know this at the time, but there were a whole bunch of things that he really wasn't happy with me about and didn't appreciate how I was being, how I was speaking with him, decisions I was making. And he took 100% responsibility for his experience in our marriage. He stopped waiting for me to change in order to reciprocate. He completely stepped off of the transactional model where it's tit for tat. If you improve in this way, then I'll give you that. He just dropped any kind of commerce orientation and took 100% responsibility for the quality of his experience in our marriage, which meant, by the way, that he started going for long bike rides in the mountains behind our home. It meant that he contributed more in parenting, in some very practical things, not just the fun things. And he interacted with me in a way that I immediately noticed and responded to. And it's like I felt bathed in his love. It was like the sun had come out from behind the clouds because of how he oriented to me. And I actually continued to be the same. I spoke with him in the same way, sometimes disrespectful, sometimes pissy. And he held steady in being 100% responsible in his communications, his ways of being, and the actions he took. And because I'm self-aware and devoted to my own growth, it was actually a very profoundly humbling experience, because I realized, oh, in the familiar script that we've had for many years, he's no longer playing the same part. He's playing a different part and interacting with me in these beautiful, attentive ways, but I'm still using the old script. I'd better get with the program. And I actually did the workshop that he had done as well. But the main thing is that even before I took the workshop, like, that gave me the understanding in order to appreciate the changes he'd made. But our marriage was so much better just because he took this workshop and got the lessons that I am teaching you in this podcast and implemented them. And I responded to them before I had any other learning, because I noticed how I was habitual in some of my responses and they really didn't fit anymore. So it was only natural that I became more loving, more generous with my attention and affection. It was a really profound experience. And what I'm describing here is inadvertently an explanation for why there are so many programs and books which are just for women. And when they implement the recommendations, they do really improve their relationships. And maybe you've had that experience. There are probably far fewer programs and books directed just at men. And that's just an observation. I'm not going to wonder why that is or build any theories. But the point is that, yes, when you, no matter what your gender is or what your relationship context is, when you genuinely take 100% responsibility for the quality of your experience in your relationship, the breakthroughs, the gratification, the improvement is so profound for you and your partner. Now, in my coaching, I do still work with some individuals, but when possible, I much prefer for individuals who are in relationships to coach both of them most of the time. I mean, there are situations where that's not the best move, but most often it is. And the reason is because in the context of uncompromising intimacy, in the context where I'm coaching a couple so that each one of them is fully expressed, becomes more true to who they are, and brings all of that glorious truth and feelings and desires into the relationship and makes room for the partner to do so as well. In that situation, when I coach both people together and each of them learns to take 100% responsibility for their relationship, there's something really magical, mysterious, exciting, and connecting which occurs because each one of them bears witness to the other one's struggle and what gets in the way of taking responsibility and what stories come up that make it the challenges in a relationship or the limitations in a relationship the consequence of the other person or of the circumstances or of too many hours worked or not enough money or issues with the children or health or like whatever it is. There is something that really opens when you can witness what your beloved partner needs to navigate in order to go deep enough to take 100% responsibility for their experience. And there's something profound and vulnerable which happens when you share that with your partner as well, when you allow yourself to be witnessed. And so you can see, as I'm talking about how beautiful this is, when both of you take 100% responsibility for the quality of your relationship, that the skill to do so is built as you cultivate curiosity, embrace honesty, be kind, and choose happiness. Those really provide a foundation for some really confronting, evolutionary, glorious growth experiences that arise when you take responsibility. Because the fact is, having a fantastic, intimate marriage, it's not something that someone else can do for you. It is key that you take responsibility and create that for yourself. Thank you for joining me on this episode of the Intimate Marriage Podcast. If you're ready to deepen your relationship and create a truly intimate, delicious, and vibrant marriage, head over to alexandrastockwell.com and choose the program that's right for you.